Hey, what's up guys, and welcome in this new tutorial where I'm gonna show you how to make a full track in the style of Nightfunk. So before starting with this tutorial, I'd like to remind you that we are only gonna use the samples from our new minimal tech house pack called Isolate Volume 4, which is a collection of one-shots, loops, construction kits, midis and much more that you can check out from the link in the description below. So as you can see here, I've already loaded a reference track from Nightfunk, and we're gonna use this one to copy the arrangement, which as you can see it's a bit more complicated than a standard tech house track. We're gonna start with the kick drum as always. So as for now we're gonna start with the basic pattern here, and we're gonna look for some kick drums inside of Isolate Volume 4. Yeah, this one is good. Also, one thing I forgot before starting is gonna be adding a limiter on the master. So we're gonna add 60 dB of gain, remove true peak limiting, put the oversampling at 16, and we're also gonna put the span to have a reference of the frequency spectrum. So as for now, the kick is this one. Okay, really similar to the original. Let's see if we have something else. Yeah, maybe this one is even more aggressive. And then we are gonna write a really basic baseline pattern. We're gonna use the serum for this one with our Mirage Volume 4 sound bank. So we're gonna start with this preset here and do something like this. So the track that we're gonna use as reference is in E major, so we're kind of just gonna go with this scale. And one thing I've noticed with Nightfunk is that like he has this kind of release starting patterns. You obviously have to pick a different preset here. Okay, something like this. And then starting from here we can make some adjustments. We're gonna put a bit of sidechain. We're gonna use the shaper box, which is I think a bit quicker, so something like this. Okay, something like this, and I think that we can add a variation to the bassline at the end of the fourth bar. Okay, like this. So now we're gonna set the level. So I'm gonna reduce the kick a little bit, and let's see the balance between the kick and the bassline here. Yeah, the bassline is much louder than the kick, so we have to reduce it a bit. Something like this. And while we are here we can do also the processing on the bassline, so we need quite a bit of saturation. Also an EQ before, maybe to remove some of the very tops. and a glue compressor. yeah, between 2 to 3 dB of compression. So let's see the levels now. Okay, perfect. We're good like this. So now we're gonna start working on the drums. So we can remove the scale here. We're gonna start with some claps. And some open hi-hats. So we have some really short open hi-hats. Maybe we can change the frequency. Okay, something like this, and then we can go with some closed hi-hats maybe, or some add loops. Let's go for the add loops. Also here, as you can see, I've pitched down the kick by 1 semitone because I think it's a bit too high. Let's see on the span. Okay, yeah, I think now it's better. Another thing that we can do coming back here is to find the fundamental of the kick drum. Which is this one. Maybe you can pitch it down a bit more. So we are at around 4. We can give it a little boost here. Then we can copy this EQ, paste it here, and reduce the same frequency on the bass line. Okay, perfect. In this way we are making a bit more space for the kick drum here so that it doesn't interfere too much with the bass line. Okay, so we kind of have the basic groove. Maybe we can find a way to add some double kicks. So here I see one. Maybe here. Maybe this one is too close. Okay, like this is better. Let's reduce the velocity a bit on the second kick drum. Okay, perfect. So now that we have the basic elements of the track, we can start to add some more stuff, for example some percussions. So here we have some percussion loops that we can use as a starting point. So I really like this percussion here. We can isolate this one. And then also like this. Look for something else. this part here is good. Okay, so let's remove the clicks and let's duplicate. Maybe you can add an EQ here. Okay, perfect. So in this pack you'll also find some Foley effects. These I think can work well here, so let's have a listen. Maybe something like this. Let's see where we can put it. Okay, so maybe we can reduce the frequency here with the frequency shifter. And we can make it a bit shorter. Let's also have a look at the stereo image because it sounds a bit too wide. Yeah, let's make it a bit more mono. And let's go like this. I think we can add another one towards here. Maybe this reverse. Let's see something else. Okay, and a last one here. Not sure about the position of this other effect, so maybe you can put it here. Okay, much better. Let's add an EQ on this one because I think that after the frequency shifter we have some more low ends. Okay, perfect. So this is kind of the base elements. Maybe we can add a couple more percussion here, so some kind of lower toms or something similar to add a bit more groove with the bass line and the kick drum. Let's go here, percussion. Something like this. Maybe this is not that good, so we're gonna stay like this for now. So I think that the low ends are a bit too high, so I'm gonna select all of the drums and add around 1 dB. And I'm gonna reduce kick and bass by 1 dB as well. Okay, perfect. So here we have the really basic initial groove. So as you can see, we're gonna start to do some arrangement here, and this is really a bit more complicated here on this Nightfunk track. So we're gonna start right from the beginning. So here we have the intro, which we're gonna cover later on. But then after we have the first drop here, or after we introduce the bass line, we start to have these very frequent empty parts in the track. So maybe we can just keep a clap here. And here we can put a vocal, for example. So let's pick a vocal for this track.
Difficulty. Talk about.
So let's put this one here.
Talk about. I think we'd like to do the talk about.
Okay, this one sounds good for now. So we're just gonna put this phrase here.
Talk about.
Maybe we can keep some of these extra percussions. Actually, the only one, this one.
Talk about.
And then we have it once again here.
Talk about.
So we can keep only like this. Now we're gonna duplicate the kick and the bass line, and we're gonna add a filter on the second track. So something like this, and we're gonna remove everything from here and here, and we're gonna start with the first breakdown. As you can see here, we have another empty space, so let's remove everything except for the clap and this percussion. And here I think we can go back to something like this. Maybe we can remove something here and add it back, for example the hi-hats.
Talk about. Talk about.
Okay, something like this. Then we have this part here where I think that we can do something cool with some kind of riser or effects. So we are in E, I'm gonna do something like this. Not sure if in E3 or not. So what we're gonna do is basically pitch bend automation. So we start from 0, we go up, and then we come back down to 0, or we can actually also go down, something like this, until, yeah, we'll see the length of this later. So let's go with the serum, and let's see if we have some scenes that can work well. Okay, something like this. We're gonna change here the semitones up to 12 and down to -12 as well. Okay, perfect like this. Let's double check the stereo width one more time. Okay, let's just be sure that we're not out of phase, and I think we can do something like this. We have to put filter automation, of course. Okay, maybe if we go down here better, so let's see something like this.
talk about. I think we'd like you to
Okay, and then we go back with the drop.
talk about. Talk about. Talk about. I think we'd like you to
Okay, so now I have to fix a bit this part because right now it's very empty.
talk about. Talk about.
So maybe something like this.
Talk about. 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 I think we'd like you to
Okay, so let's reduce the gain here.
talk about. Talk about. Talk about. Talk about. Talk about. Talk about. Talk about.
And let's do something like this, and also we can put a filter and do an automation right here. So something like this.
Talk about. Talk about. Talk about. Talk about. Talk. 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 Talk about. Talk about. Talk about. I think we'd like you to
And then something like this.
talk about. Talk about. Talk about. Talk about. Talk about. Talk. 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 Talk about. Talk about. I think we'd like
And then we can put a double kick here.
talk. 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 Talk about. Talk about. Talk. Talk. Talk about. Talk about. I think we'd like you to
Okay, let's add some effects.
talk. 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 Talk about. Talk about. I think we'd like you to
Okay, perfect. So let's have a listen once again to the breakdown.
talk about. 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 I think we'd like you to
Okay, perfect. So I think that in this other part of the drop we can add some more elements, for example stab. So I think something like this maybe, and I want to add a baseline stab. So let's see what we have here. Something like this. So here we have to be really careful with the processing because we have to remove some of the lows, but not too much. Like this, and then we're gonna have to add a bit of sidechain, but also here not too much because otherwise we won't be able to hear the step.
We'd like you to I think we'd like you to
Maybe we can add a kick here.
I think we'd like you to
Let's have a listen once again.
talk about. Talk about. I think we'd like you to
And maybe we can add something else. So I'm gonna take the bass line, maybe these last notes, and let's look for maybe not really sure if a synth can fit here. Maybe we can go with the bass line and remove a lot of the lows. Something like this.
like you to I think we'd like you to
Okay, so we have to take back the sidechain a bit more. And let's edit the cutoff like this. Okay, so let's have a listen once again.
talk about. Talk about. I think we'd like you to
Okay, so let's remove everything here and let's put the vocal.
Talk about. I think we'd like to do the.
Okay, and I think that we can add some closed hi-hats at this point, so something like this. Let's go in the drum one shot closed hi-hats. We're going for a classic closed hi-hats pattern, reducing a bit the velocity here where it can interfere with the kick drum. Maybe adding a bit of sidechain. Not really sure about this one, to be honest. Maybe we can add some rides. Let's try this one. So something like this, for example. Let's have a listen. We have to keep this one very low. Okay, this one is a bit better, and then we can just duplicate here. Here, as you can see, we have another small break. Let's do like this, and maybe we can do something like this here. Okay, not sure. Yeah, we can put the vocal.
Talk about. Talk about. Talk about. I think we'd like to do the.
Here we can go kick and bass and maybe some percussion elements so that we can transition into the other break that we have here.
Talk about. I think we'd like to talk about. I think we'd like to do the.
And then the vocal once again with the clap.
Talk about. I think we'd like to do the.
And here we can put obviously the claps, and which is doing something like this. Then the hi-hats maybe.
Talk about. I think we'd like to do the. I think we'd like to do the.
Then we have these kind of effects here, so I can actually put it here so that we have a bit more space.
Talk about. I think we.
So I can remove this part. Let's add the kick, and eventually we're gonna copy this part here.
I think we'd like to do the.
Okay, we have to take a look at this one once more because I think it's a bit too empty.
Talk about. I think we'd like to do the.
Let's add some effects here. So here we can do a kind of automation maybe. So we're gonna take the frequency of the first filter and open it up a bit. So maybe from here, something like this. Then we're gonna go into the serum and take the cutoff, and we're gonna do something like this.
I think we'd like to do the.
Okay, so let's duplicate this one. Here we have the same pose, so something like this with the vocal in here, and then we go back to the normal drop.
I think we'd like to do the...
Let's duplicate it. Okay, so now actually here we have a bit more space for the drop, and then we have quite a long breakdown. I think we have to reduce a bit of what's in here because it might get a bit too boring, so we're gonna actually make the track shorter. Here we have around 30 seconds drop. This one can be a 1 minute because here we have this one which is 45 if we count the kick and bass only part. So if we want to make this one 1 minute, and then we can go into the main break here, which can be 45 seconds, for example. Let's see. So here we have to do some changes actually. So we're gonna remove everything here.
Talk about. I think we'd like to do the... Talk about. I think we'd like to do the...
Here maybe we can remove the rights and add something else.
Talk about. I think we'd like to do the...
Not sure if the snare can fit. We're gonna use a MIDI track in this case, so let's have a listen.
Talk about. I think we'd like to do the...
Okay, something like this. Maybe you can try a different sample.
I think we'd like to do the...
Let's remove a bit of the lows. Let's try with some shakers as well. So this one, for example. Can do something like this.
Talk about. I think we'd like to do the... Talk about. I think we'd like to do the...
Yeah, I'm not really sure about this one. Let's see if with a bit of autopan it gets better.
Talk. Talk about. I think we'd like to do the... Talk about. I think we'd like to do the... I think we'd like to do the...
Let's have a listen from here.
Talk about. I think we'd like to do the... Talk about. I think we'd like to do the...
Again, I'm not really sure about this one. Let's add an LFO tool, maybe. Okay, right now it can be a bit better. So now we have to go into the main breakdown, which is quite a bit long, I think, for this kind of track. So we can do something a bit shorter. So for example, we're gonna take back the riser that we had here, but we're gonna make it longer. So something like this. Let's go back to the notes, and we obviously have to change the automation until here. So let's remove this part, and let's go Command A and delete everything, and we're gonna do like this. Okay, obviously we have the filter, then the vocal is going here. Gonna copy the kicks.
I think we'd like you to.
Okay, something like this. Now we have to figure out a bit of this part. So surely we're gonna do something like this, similar to what we had before. I'm gonna remove this and paste it here.
I think we'd like you to talk about.
And here, not sure, maybe we can keep only the drums.
Talk about. I think we'd like you to.
Or only the bass line.
Talk about. I think we'd like you to. Talk about. I think we'd like you to. Talk about. I think we'd like you to.
Okay, perfect. So the idea here is to make another automation of the filter cutoff and automate also the frequency on the kick drum. And then here we're gonna have a down lifter. Let's go in the effects.
Talk about.
Maybe we can add this one.
Talk about. I think we'd like you to. Talk about.
Okay, so maybe we can go like this here.
I think we'd like you to.
Obviously we have to do an automation here to remove the lows.
I think we'd like you to.
Okay, so let's have another listen. Here maybe we can add some strings. So let's have a try. So we're going E3, actually also E4, and we're gonna load the M1 from Korg. Let's see in the string section. Maybe E5. Okay, let's add an EQ. And the filter, of course.
I think we'd like you to. I think we'd like you to.
Okay, much better like this. So yeah, we're gonna do another 1 minute breakdown. So something like this. We already have the first 15 seconds.
I think we'd like you to.
Okay, and then we get into the outro. So this part, we're gonna cut it, and we're gonna copy this part here. We're gonna duplicate it.
I think we'd like you to. I think we'd like you to.
Okay, perfect like this. So we are actually gonna reproduce this part into the intro. So actually we're going to do something like this, and then this. Gonna copy this part here. Okay, perfect. So basically we are done with the arrangement. Now I'm gonna give it a listen to some of the main parts of the track to make sure that everything is alright. So we're gonna go into the first breakdown.
I think we'd like you to. like to do this. I think we'd like to do this. Talk about it. I think we'd like to do this.
So here we can add this down lifter maybe.
Talk about it. I think we'd like to do this. I think we'd like to do this. Talk about it. I think we'd like to do this. Talk about it. Talk about it. Talk about it. I think we'd like to do this. Talk about it. I think we'd like to do this. Talk about it. Talk about it. Talk about it. I think we'd like to do this. Talk about it. 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 I think we'd like to do this.
Okay, perfect. So one last thing before going into the mixing is gonna be adding the endless mild rack, which is basically a combination of different effects like reverb, delay, and much more, which is really useful here in the build-ups.
Talk about it. 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 Talk about it.
Okay, perfect. So we're gonna copy it. You can actually use it in every small break that we have.
Talk about it. Talk about it. Talk about it. I think we'd like to do this.
So we're gonna do it here and here, and then here as well, something like this.
I think we'd like to talk about it. 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 I think we'd like to do this. Talk about it.
Okay, perfect. So now that we have this set up, we can go into the mixing. So I'm gonna select this part here. So by looking at the balance between kick and bass, I think we're good. We have to check the span a bit to see the balance between the lows and the highs. We have quite a lot of low frequencies, which is normal in this style of track, but we're still gonna reduce it a bit so that they are more or less balanced. So then we have the clap, adding a bit of EQ. Here on the open hi-hats we already have an EQ, just want to check the stereo image here.
Talk about it. I think we'd like to do this.
Making it a bit more stereo, and we also have this hi-hat loop. Let's check the stereo image on this as well, which is already quite wide. The shakers. Yeah, we can make them a bit more stereo. Then we have the snares. Just reducing some of the tops and then the rights. Yeah, basically nothing to do here. Moving on, we have the percussions. So let's start with any cue. Okay, something like this. Then the bassline stub. You can add a bit of saturation here. And then an EQ to remove some of the extra lows that are added here. You can add a bit more sidechain. Then we have this other synth. Let me check the stereo image on this one. Okay, it's not too mono, and I think we're gonna have to go, yeah, we're gonna use the standard Ableton saturator here. Let's copy the same EQ. Then we have the vocal, so we're gonna start with an EQ here. So here the main problem I think is that the vocal is too focused on the mids and the lows. So we're gonna duplicate it, we're gonna select everything, we're gonna change the warp mode to complex, and we're gonna add 12 semitones. And we're gonna mix it with the original one.
I think we'd like you to.
Yeah, not really sure if this one can fit.
I think we'd like you to. I think we'd like you to. I think we'd like you to. I think we'd like you to.
Yeah, as you can hear, we are adding a bit more high frequencies. As for the processing here, we already have the vocal, which is processed.
I think we'd like you to.
Maybe some EQ with the Lufticus, which is a really good free plugin, boosting some of the mid tops.
I think we'd like you to. I think we'd I think we'd I think we'd like you. I think we'd like you to.
Maybe we can also add an OTT, so we're gonna use the one in Ableton.
I think we'd like you to. I think we'd like you to. I think we'd like you to.
Okay, something like this. Then we have the strings. I mean, not a lot of processing to do. The riser.
I think we'd like you to.
So let's see if we can add only 6 semitones instead of 12 here.
Talk about. I think we'd like you to. Talk about. I think we'd like you to.
Yeah, it's much better like this, and then we can go into the mastering. So first thing is to check the headroom. We have around -3 to -4. I think we have to reduce everything by 1.5 dB. Okay, we are around -5, -6. We're gonna start with Pro Q3, doing some mid-side EQ.
I think we'd like you to.
Something like this. Then let's load an imager. We're mainly gonna focus on the top and mid-top frequencies, so this range. We're not working on the mid and the mid lows because here we have the kick and the bass line, so I don't want to make them stereo. Eventually, if there is something here that you want to spread a bit more, I recommend go on the single channel and do this same processing. Then we're gonna go with some SSL compression. I'm gonna use the standard mastering preset here. Should if B is good, and then we have the Pro L2, so we're gonna go with the punchy.
Talk about. I think we'd like you to. Talk about. I think we'd like you to.
So usually I like to stay below this -30 dB mark, and in terms of RMS around -8, -8.1, which is what we have here. Maybe a bit more sidechain here.
Talk about. I think we'd like you to.
Okay, so basically that's all for this tutorial. Now you can hear the final result.
about, talk 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 about. I think we'd like to do this. I think we'd like to do this. Talk about, talk about, talk about. I think we'd like to do this. 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 Talk about, talk about, talk about. I think we'd like to do this. I think we'd like to do this. Talk about, talk about, talk about. I think we'd like to do this. Talk about. 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 I think we'd like to do this. Talk about. I think we'd like to do this. Talk about. Talk about. Talk about. I think we'd like to do this. Talk about. I think we'd like to do this. Talk about. Talk about. Talk about. I think we'd like to do this.
So yeah, basically that's all for this tutorial. Don't forget to check out Isolate Volume 4 from the link in the description below. Let us know what tutorials would you like to see next, and I'll see you soon. Bye!